Call the special meeting of the Charles City Board of Education to order and have roll call, please.
Dyke.
Present.
Walker.
Here.
Frisbee.
Present.
Maycumber. Here. Winnering. Here.
All members are present. Agenda item 1 is the approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or corrections?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll have roll call vote.
Walker.
Yes.
Frisbee.
Yes.
Maycumber.
Yes.
Winnering. Yes. Dyke.
Yes. Motion carried 5-0. Agenda item 2 is to welcome the visitors and have public comment. As I've been doing lately, I'm not going to read that whole statement. You all have copies of it. If anyone has any comments, now would be the time to come to the microphone and state your name. Seeing no one move or get up, we'll move on to agenda item 3. Comments by board members and superintendent. Dr. Cox.
Thank you. Friday morning, the director of the Iowa Department of Education announced that waivers of the school start date will no longer be automatic. Schools will have to demonstrate that starting on or after August 31st will have a significant negative educational impact if they wish to start before the 31st. The criteria that districts will have to meet to get a waiver won't be announced until January. The August 31st start date likely will mean the last day of school would be during the second week of June, and school calendar discussions with staff will start in January. Friday afternoon, I was over at the West Fork Industrial Technology Academy in Rockwell. I toured that facility with 2 other community members here in Charles City. Through the academy, students are able to earn up to 15 credits from NIAC, and they can get a jump start on career pathways. Career academies have been around for 45 years, and they have increased in number across the U.S. The visit to West Fork, in combination with the information that I learned about the Waukee CAPS program, has provided quite a few possibilities for us here in Charles City for our students. And then finally, we have a technology survey that's currently being taken by teachers and students, and it will give us a glimpse at how integrated our technology is across the district. And we also just concluded a survey on our website to get some insights on how to improve that.
Very good. Any board members have any comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to agenda item 4, project finance report. Is that you or Ms. O'Brien?
Ms. O'Brien.
I just wanted to share some of my thoughts prior to when you finalize your middle school design. The project estimate of $17.8 million was a carryover from previous project designs, which originated from the summer of 2013. This is not necessarily a maximum amount that might be funded through our existing sales tax or PEPAL. There is a finite amount of facility funds we will receive. However, there are many variables that may change the amount we receive, such as revenue growth, enrollment changes, and whether the PEPAL funding is extended beyond 2020. Piper Jaffray used what we believe are reasonable projections to determine the amount available. BLDD designs present some challenges to achieve a $17.8 million project. Before changes are made to the design, the effects of increasing the project budget should be studied to determine the consequences of the changes, and the district may need to weigh all the options available to you before you change your design. I asked Matt Gillespie to run the cash flow for the district's facility funds if the project was increased. I threw out $18.8 million project just to get an idea of what that would do. Remember, our borrowing capacity is limited by the facility funds estimates. So That's already determined. What we could do is take cash at the end of the project to pay for whatever is remaining. Matt's projections using an $18.8 million budget shows no negative cash flows if the PEPAL were to be extended. There are negative cash flows beginning in 2023 if the PEPAL is not extended. During the 8.5 years before the project, negative balances begin to occur, and if the PEPAL is not extended, the district could make changes to routine expenses in order to make the facility fund accounting balance. If the district experiences a positive student enrollment trend, because we're using a negative 5-student trend now in the presumptions, along with some level of decreased annual facility spending, we could overcome any deficit if the PEPAL were not renewed. If you want Matt to come to Charles City to present a revised project financing cash flow and answer questions, we can schedule a time with him. You would just need to tell me.
Anyone have any questions or comments for Terry?
So currently what we're projecting is that we've got X number of dollars, I think it's $750,000 that we've kind of reserved from PPEL for routine ongoing maintenance and whatever of our other facilities, right?
Right.
So is this projected to dip into that somewhat?
No.
No, okay, so that would be that reserve that we've set to upkeep all of our other facilities
Is
would be
still
maintained.
Still gonna be
maintaining that 750, plus there's a 3% inflation on that included in the projection as well.
Well,
So we've got lots of buffers, then we're not,
Right.
okay. Sure.
so the, okay.
Well, it looks like with, if Pebble didn't pass to be extended, we've got an 8.5-year period to make corrections, to
Right.
adjust for that. Well, when will we know if Pebble's going to be extended?
Well, our PEPAL doesn't expire until 2020, but we could go to a vote earlier than that. And, you know, one thought would be go to vote in 2017 when our instructional support levy is also expiring.
Okay.
And that has a, I'm sorry, that has a fairly long-standing history of passing, is that, you know, fairly, that's a simple majority, right? I believe.
Yes, it's a simple majority. Yeah, I mean, I think there was one year where there was a petition and it didn't, but for the most part, since I've been here, it has passed.
Wasn't that the year that the board voted to extend it and a petition came forward asking for a public vote, though?
Correct.
So otherwise, it's
Right.
always been on a public vote.
And both items can be voted on at the same,
At the same
Same
time.
voting.
Mhm.
Well, I think we need to understand the worst-case scenario, and I would like to see the numbers, just so we can understand, you know, what that number is. So I would like to see Matt come and give us a review on where we are with everything.
Okay, Matt will want to know how much you want to fund, so that would need to come first. You
Yeah.
need to figure out, look at the design, figure out
Sure.
how much would it cost to get what you want, and then we can talk to him and he can come prepared for that.
Okay.
Talking out loud just a little bit here, this, the projections we've done, like you said, were based on a estimated 5 students per year decline in enrollment through through 2029.
Right?
And so in our enrollment study showed that estimated up 90 by 2020.
2020.
So in 5 or 6 years, I mean, there's 120 student discrepancy between, or buffer between what the projections are on this, but also our enrollment study.
Right.
And that 120 is at around $1,000 per student, right? So that's per year, is that the
Yes,
sales
right,
tax?
the sales tax amount is about 1,000.
And if we were to maintain the current project budget and continue going forward, and we realize that increase in students, that's just additional cash that we accumulate
Right.
in the sales tax, in our available funds.
Right.
I don't know how much we can answer their question until after we get through agenda item 5.
Yeah,
And I'm guessing we'll be making some decisions this evening on agenda item 5. And then, if memory serves me correctly, that when we saw the estimated timeline back in August from BLDD, they're looking to come back in January with hopefully final information on a project so that they can start on the bid specs. So,
we need
I would like to make
some
one little comment to
decisions.
that, Scott.
yeah,
I think instead of, I know we've set 2016 August of school year, but nothing says that if, for some reason, to make sure we get everything right, that we don't have to delay things for a couple months, that we could move in the middle of the year or at Christmas time or whatever else.
right.
Yes.
So I think it's very important that we figure out, but I don't want to rush into making a decision to build it just so we can beat this deadline.
Yeah, agreed.
The biggest deadline we have is spending
Yep.
the 80% of
Right.
the 10 million we already have
Okay.
borrowed,
And even
so
out.
that we don't have
Yeah.
penalties on that.
By July of 2016.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're still,
Yep, so we would have a month or two if we needed more time to, I mean, just say in case we would, to.
right.
I think we're all in agreement with
Study.
that, absolutely, that we've got one chance to get it right. We'll take the time necessary.
So to go from the 17.8 to the 18.8, is that the way you understand it? Would we be changing the assumptions of the 5-student decline? No?
No.
That doesn't even change that?
No,
So even if that was realized, that may, okay.
Right.
Excellent.
Because he's going to look at the worst-case scenario.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the 5-student decrease a historical trend? Or is that just what they're,
well, no.
I know he's been here twice in the last 14 months, but
Yeah,
he has a lot of paperwork when he comes.
right. I mean, he's looking at historical numbers, but I think the enrollment survey somewhat changed that as well. I
Okay.
think it might have been a higher decrease at one point, and then we adjusted it to 5.
Excellent.
Thank you.
So when,
It was at 15 previously, wasn't it?
that's what
It
I'm
was a-
thinking too.
It was a larger number.
It was at 15
Wow.
annual decrease, because
Wow.
that, doesn't that fall more in line with historical trends? If memory serves?
Yeah,
Okay.
because I think that's what he had used, was just historical.
So do we want,
Do I read that right, though, that if we don't get the 90 increase by the certain date, that even if we just get to 5, we're even, so that we're still in
Right.
good shape?
Correct.
Even if we
Yeah,
don't lose
even
it,
if just-
yeah.
yeah.
Even if, yeah.
Even if we just don't lose any students, not gain any students.
I don't know if like an even trend would get you enough. It may have to be a combination of, several things. I mean, there's a lot of assumptions yet that could change this. And you would have time, but like Matt could probably explain, I'm sure he could explain it a lot better, answer your questions.
well, and from a financial side, he's always going to give us a conservative estimate
Right.
for our protection.
Yeah, that's what we need. Well, why don't we talk to BLDD and we can maybe circle back to this? Come up with a number tonight?
As far as a potential number that they think, or we think our
That we
project
think?
might hit.
Mhm, yeah.
There's no action on this item, so, if at the end of the meeting, individual members want Matt to come in January, we can certainly individually tell Terry and she can set it up,
Sounds good.
okay? Because this isn't an action item, so. Anything else on the financing? If not, we'll move on to agenda item 5, BLDD design update. Sam Johnson and the team is here. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I think Jeff's going to put the presentation up on the screen, but if you want to follow along on your hard copies, we'll get started. At the beginning, we have listed some project updates. This is what the changes that have been made based on our conversations with staff. We were on site November, I think 13th, 14th, sound right? Meeting with all of the staff. So just a few highlights. Trying to incorporate special education programs into the learning studios, adding some resource spaces for industrial tech and family and consumer science, making sure that we've got some security issues addressed with, for instance, the library book stacks, being able to lock off the studios in case of intruders, those kinds of things. So there's a summary there for you. And I'm going to go through this fairly quickly since it's so long. The next section in project review is the building program. So this includes a list of every space and the size that was our design goal in implementing the plans. So I'm not going to go through all of those. They're all in the plans and the sizes are noted on the plans. So we've got phase 1 to start with, and then phase 2 is also right behind that. So you can see what we're looking towards in the future as a target for square footage. I'm going to jump ahead to the site plan. So the first site plan page is the phase 1 site plan. There's quite a bit more civil work or site work than what we'd originally anticipated when we were doing design development way back in the summer. So we've been working with SEH, Yagi, Colby, Terry, and Estes, and figuring out what can we do with the site to keep that cost as low as possible but still be very functional, knowing that we'll be coming back to do a phase 2. So what you're seeing on the screen is kind of our compromise for now, trying to eliminate creating the entire ring road out of concrete or asphalt, doing a portion of it as gravel pavement just so emergency vehicles have access to the site, but still allowing for a bus drop-off and a parent drop-off at separate entrances to the school for safety of students. So you'll see on the right-hand side of the page, which is the north staff parking lot, it's about half the size that it would be eventually, with around 38 spaces, plus or minus. Just about enough for middle school staff. With the visitor spaces at the bottom of the page, which is the east, you can see in the gray kind of the connecting link between those for circulation for parents to come in. We'd offer up as an alternate bid. So if bids came in well and we had the money to create that connection to Highland Avenue. So this is something that we would put in the drawings as an alternate bid. If the money is there, we go ahead and do it. It helps with the circulation and parent drop-off, those kinds of things. So that's why that's in kind of a darker shade. And then you can see we're not showing the First Avenue extension in this plan. That's kind of a wild card. We'll be meeting with the city in the next month or so and kind of get their feel on where they stand with that, what their thoughts are, and then we can move forward from there. We think eventually it's in the district's best interest to have that First Avenue extended, but without committing to paying for that out of the district funds at this point in time. So if that's something in the future you need to do, you can do that. You can also see you have the ability to leave the storage shed in place if you wanted to in the site plan. If it makes more sense for you to do that, you have that option at this point in time. The other thing I wanted to point out on the site plan, the existing building elevation is at 56.88 feet. So that's just your reference number. The new middle school addition would be about 20 inches lower than that. So we would have ramps that go from the existing north wing down into the middle school because our topography of our site slopes down as you go away from the building. So to help set the building into the site just a little bit. So that would be completely 100% accessible. It's ramps only. so that anybody can get very easily from the north wing of the existing school to the new middle school. On the next page would be the Phase 2. You can see the completion of the ring road. You can see that the staff parking has increased to fill in that space that's available at the north side. Also adding some visitor spaces at what will be the high school entrance on the west side of the top, and then some event parking at a second entry lobby commons area. And then still maintaining the existing high school parking lot. All right, I'm going to flip a couple pages to the floor plans. What we're showing tonight is what we're calling two different options. The first option is the plan that we've been developing over the last month. This includes a middle school gymnasium. So option one is that. We were also asked to provide a design that includes a high school competition-sized gym. So that will be option 2 in your packet. So we'll go through option 1 first. What we're looking at is the overall floor plan. You can see we've got the Learning Studio wing and then the gymnasium and commons wing. Our total square footage for this option is 82,461 square feet. So we're right where we want to be as far as the size of the building. If you flip one page, you can see the second floor. You can see the open to below notes. That's the upper story of the gymnasium and the commons area being opened down to the first floor. If we flip another page, you can see an enlarged plan. It's a little easier to read. The square footages for each of the spaces are on there. But just a quick walkthrough, as you come into the building, it's a secure vestibule where you can then be admitted into the administration area. So we have an administration suite, and then you go into the main commons area. And there's a stair that goes up to the second floor, right there on the east side of the commons. And then you can continue to the left to go towards the gymnasium, locker rooms, those kind of areas, the wellness areas. Or you can keep going into the commons area where you've got your public restrooms, the serving area, which could also serve as your concession stand during events. And then you can see the treehouse has kind of morphed its form. It's a much smaller, more simplified treehouse than what we were originally showing. So basically just a platform on the second floor with some columns coming down and supporting it. So really just what you think of when you think of your childhood treehouse, really basic. Mm-hmm. But still meets the desires and the needs and the fun that the kids had asked for in some of our visioning meetings. If you go to the next page, this is an enlargement of the Learning Studio. You can see as you enter the studios, there's now doors so you can lock off the studio during intruder events or for any other reason you might want to lock down the school. There's teacher planning areas as well as the 5 classroom spaces, the 3 lab or studio spaces, more of a lecture space labeled Listen, and then the media labs. We've relocated special ed to be in the center of the studio, so that's on both floors. So physical needs on one floor, more behavioral-oriented needs on the other floor, so that those students are within the studio and not having to leave to go to special pullouts. The other thing you'll notice on the first floor is resource space for art, family consumer science, industrial tech, and music. So all of those are close to the studios and provide the resource spaces that those staff members requested in order to have their programs within the studio. So the music, industrial tech, and FCS use existing classroom spaces in the north wing that were the old science labs. So we're looking at doing some minor renovation in order to have those functions in those spaces, not a major renovation. Going to the next page, that's a blow-up of the second floor. You can see the fitness room and the information commons or library spaces. We've added some furnishings in all of these so you can get a better feel for what fits in those spaces. You'll also notice the guidance suite on the right-hand side of your page. That's above the serving area on the first floor. The guidance wanted to be as close to the learning studios as they could be, and so that we felt like that was a pretty good location. You flip the next page is just the second floor of the learning studio. It's exactly the same as the first floor, except the special ed spaces are just slightly different. Are there any questions on option 1? Okay, we'll keep moving to option 2. So option 2 is a little bit larger than option 1. It's 84,087 square feet, plus some space on the second floor in the gymnasium for where the bleachers sit on top of the locker rooms. So that's another almost like 2,800 square feet. It's not full square footage like you would have in the rest of the building because it's really just a platform for the bleachers to sit on, but it does have added cost to it. So let's switch to an enlarged plan. The basic layout is very, very similar to option 1. The gymnasium's in the same place, the wellness kind of corridor, the public restrooms are slightly different. The other thing to notice, the serving area is on the south side of the commons instead of the north side of the commons. I'm going to have you flip to the enlarged plan 2 pages later. Give you a little better idea. The commons, the stairs in the same location, the treehouse is in the same location. I think we did a seating count. We figured the seating in the commons area for either option is about 150, 160 people that are really comfortably spread out. For banquet seating, closer to 200 when you really want to get a lot more people into a space.
That's on one floor, right? Just the main,
On the main
not
floor.
counting the-
Right. So there's opportunity for additional seating up above. Right. So another big difference to this option is in the learning studios. You can see in order to reduce the size of the learning studios in order to enlarge the gym, we made some modifications to the Listen classrooms and to the media room. So what you'll see, in order to get rid of some square footage, we've combined the 2 Listen classrooms into 1 and the 2 media centers into 1. And the functions in the center with the special ed and other support spaces are exactly the same. We just made the courtyard bigger and squeezed that footprint down a little bit. Going to the next page, the second floor. Information Commons is in the same place. The fitness center is also in the same location. It's a slightly different configuration because we don't have the mechanical room on that floor. You can see we've moved the guidance suite kind of next to the fitness area. So it's no longer on top of the serving area close to the learning studios like it was in option 1. So that's a change. And then the second floor learning studio is exactly the same as the first floor. The next section is enlarged floor plans. This gives you a better idea of what's going on in each of those spaces. I'm not going to go through these in detail. They're pretty self-explanatory. Sam and Danielle and I are doing some research on the studio lab spaces right now, doing research and figuring out exactly what those need to be, and we'll do a presentation on those the next time we come, the specifics of each of those. The other thing we'll be doing is meeting with staff again to show them the revisions and the development and to get their input and feedback again. One thing I did want to note is we are showing the existing high school kitchen. Jeff, I think go maybe a couple more. We had our kitchen consultant, our food service consultant, Ed Perman, come up and tour the kitchen, talk to the staff, and make some recommendations on how the existing high school kitchen could function for phase 1, serving all the students in both the middle school and the high school. He felt like the key things that we needed was more cooler space, more freezer space, and more storage space. He suggested that we do a walk-in cooler and freezer that are external to the building. There's existing windows, the location where we're showing doors to a new cooler freezer, and then modifying the location where the cooler and freezer are now and adding some shelving and storage units. So we felt like with those modifications, that kitchen could function fairly affordably to serve the student population.
That essentially involves all the food preparation here and then just serving through the serving areas.
That's right. Yep. The next section is master plans, and I'm going to let Sam discuss the master plan options.
Thanks, Jean. In developing this this phase, the middle school plan, it was important to develop a plan that could allow you the flexibility to make decisions for phase 2 when they were logically made. We wanted to make sure that whatever plan was developed here didn't limit the opportunities. First of all, the opportunity, perhaps as you move forward and decide there are spaces in the very southern portion of the building you'd like to reuse, you could do that, or if you wanted to replace them entirely and build them new, you could do that. So what we're going to show you is 2 different options based on the 2 options Jean has shown about how this first phase can allow you to continue in either direction later on. So here's phase 1 that Jean just presented, showing the overall composition of the building that would remain after phase 1 was completed. Let's go on, Jeff. Okay, so what you'll see then is you'll see phase 2A. When you see 2A, A means this shows how the building could be configured if you were going to keep the existing gym and the southern portion of the building. So you see phase 2 would show the high school. What is currently the middle school would end up being part of the high school component, so that it could be attached to the other high school areas. The middle school would be then the new component constructed. A new auditorium could be constructed, completing the connection to the existing building, in a new administrative area at a new front door. 2B then is the possibility, or shows you what the plan could look like if you have decided that the existing buildings didn't provide the suitable environment that you'd like. So this means that all of this building, with the exception of the northern portion that we're keeping, would be constructed new. So here you see where the auditorium could occur, where competition gym could occur, and you could see the ag area constructed west of the existing science labs. So you see that the middle school project that we're proposing allows you to either continue to use the existing building or replace it and construct all new. So that was with the middle school gym. So now let's look at option 2. And the same thing holds true with option 2. Here's the option that shows a competition gym instead of the middle school gym, and it's completely as Jean just described. So let's go on to phase 2A. Phase 2A, again, shows how the first phase could be connected to the existing southern building, and this could be the complete build-out. Again, what is being proposed as the middle school would become the high school. The new middle school studios would then be constructed. This time the auditorium would be in a slightly different location. The administration area would remain the same, and this would be the complete build-out using the existing building. Going on to phase 2B, if the existing southern portion of the building were to be removed, you can see how that could be completed. The 2 gyms would be side by side, wrestling next to the gym, and there'd be a new event entrance to the southern portion of the building. We've also got what we call phase 2C, and it almost is an option 3, if you will, but what it does is we've shown how the additional studios could be constructed to the north, but it's also possible that those studios could be constructed in between the 2 existing wings. And so here you see where the middle school studios could be constructed. They'd be joined to the first phase construction with a new commons. And if you look at phase 2, the next phase, 2D, where you were to take down the existing building, you see that the new middle school could then be located, so it's not quite as spread out. And I have to say that this possibility could work for either option 1 or option 2. So I think the thing I want you to take from this is that the middle school design concept, whether you go with a competition gym or a middle school gym, both of those do not limit your choices down the road when it's time to look at those critically. And so what we'd like to do now is ask Jeff to go through the renderings of what the buildings and the different concepts could look like.
So if you look at the model that we've created so far, here we show up on the screen for phase one.
Can we get a mic on you, Jeff?
Oh, that'd be great. Can we, anybody?
Take Jen.
Great. So if we look at phase one for option one, we start to see how the existing building as it is with the addition for the studio and also for the commons, and in this case could be the competition gym or the practice gym. And so with this phase, start to see how the ring road coming around and those dashed areas where the future expansion would be. Because what we had wanted to do is maintain that court for access and views. Oh, there we go. For access and views. So if we start to look at kind of the front entry, which would be on that east side, we start to see how the materials are starting to play out and some of the massing. So what we're trying to do is blend how masonry, concrete, glass, wood, all those can kind of play into creating some character and identity within the building. So right now we're kind of working with the budget and figuring out systems that actually work. So we're kind of testing different ideas out right now. But overall, having that focal piece for the entry, dealing with some of the topography, and maintaining the character that we had talked about from the very beginning. And looking at kind of overall, as you come in that ring road, coming towards that drop-off area, you start to see how the rest of it kind of plays in, and then towards the right or towards the west, how that existing building starts to play into that. And so looking at from the top, from the west side, the southwest side, we start to see how that courtyard starts to play and that activity area in there, and starting to prep for what happens then in phase two. So with phase two, kind of swing around. In this option, which is more of type, the one, is we expand the commons kind of where it is, and expanding the admin in that area and the drop-off mainly from there, maintaining the court, and then adding that addition towards the north. So that maintains that court for basic activities and the community gathering. And so this is an option that we can go with. Other ones in the option two, where we had the commons in a different location, there's a lot of flexibility of how we can move into that phase two based on those developments. And yeah, we start to see what it looks like kind of from the front now, which would be the main entry for the high school, and also the event entry of how those spaces may start to play out. So if we start to see how the main entry for the high school and the event as well, and also have a secondary entrance for the gym as well. And so that gives us an idea of kind of where we are with materials, the massing, working out some of the details of the cost as far as systems, and working out final details of the plan and program.
Jeff, could you get to a person's eye view of the phase two main entry?
Yeah. Here we start to show where the entry could be, and we have some options of finalizing that program. Originally, we were planning some renovations of the existing admin area. Well, it could be maybe the admin area stays the same. But until we get to the phase two, there's a lot of flexibility on what we can do with that space. Because we had talked about overall with the commons area that you'll have some flexibility to do banquets and to do a lot of community activities. So working with that space and kind of growing where it is. So we wanted to make sure that with all the future phasing, we didn't limit anything based on the things we have to decide right now. So, and the court space, oh, that's that one. Oh, nope, I'm sorry. Sorry, I can get everyone 6 through, okay. So if we look at part of the other area, if we look at the other wing, and I'll just create this view, of what starts to happen with that court space, As far as activities, and we're talking about the outdoor classroom spaces, educational areas, that things could be growing, or the type of how ag or the exploratories would happen within this courtyard, or actually performance spaces, that this could be a gathering space. You know, there was a talk of banquets and weddings and all kinds of things. There could be outdoor concerts. There's a lot of opportunities. So we're trying to maintain that kind of character and working with the topography and everything else involved.
All right, Jeff, do you want to go back to the PowerPoint? Or the PDF, sorry. All right, so then the last thing in the packet is budget. Well, that's really tiny. We've been working with Paul and his team at Estes Construction, trying to hit our $17.6 million budget while still maintaining all of the vision and goals that we've been working with you on for the last year. So the budget that we're presenting tonight, or that Paul's going to be presenting tonight, it hits the target, and we feel comfortable that you're still going to be able to meet all of those educational goals that we've talked about to this time. So in order to do that, we've had to go back and forth on some of the materials and systems, those kinds of things. And so what Paul's going to present tonight are some options and alternates, things that you could do or add to the $17.6 million, either add or subtract, based on what your priorities are and what your preferences are. And so we can talk about those. So I'm going to let Paul do his presentation on the budget, and then we'll kind of go back and forth.
Before Paul begins, I have a question. Do you expect answers on this page this evening?
Well, I think based on the conversation we had earlier, if there's some flexibility in the timeline, then we do not need answers tonight. And I know that those are big decisions. These are big decision items. And so I think after having that discussion, I think we're on the same page, and you're understanding that delaying decisions sooner than later, but it's your timeline that we're trying to hit. So we're happy to give you the time that you need to make an informed decision and make the right decision for the district.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. So there are a lot of things we're going to go through, but just to give you a little background on this. This is kind of just a summary, and we gave you a little more detail in this book, but a summary of all the work. Off to the side, there's a whole bunch of calculations going on in these workbooks. So, and this is again, these are not bids, these are just budgets. The information that's being presented tonight by BLDD is a lot more than we knew the first time around, but it's still very conceptual. So this is not Estes saying this is what it's going to cost, but this is the team that have worked together, going back and forth for a number of weeks now, talking about how we feel this budget's going to come about, and we feel very comfortable with it because we're working very closely with BLDD and our design partners, our design consultants on mechanical, electrical, and civil and structural. So we have all that information. We're working as a team. So we feel pretty comfortable where we are right now. This is kind of showing a summary, but the book that we handed out has a little more detail. One of the things Gene mentioned is we're working on the site. That's probably the thing that we know the least about yet as far as the design and the concepts. So we're working on that, but there's still a lot of information to be found out. So we think that's more than what we had originally budgeted. So we're trying to make up that difference in other areas by doing some different things. As you can see, we broke out the building and the CM fees and expenses. That CM fee and expenses was really in that original budget. We just broke it out. It's easier to track that way of what those costs are. But you can see that is under budget right now. And we utilize some of the contingency as we're going forward to balance that out. So we're still at the same number we were before, trying to balance that out. Just to say where that, so we're still total, that's the construction cost, and you can see the soft costs, they stayed about the same as well. And we're still at that 17.6 million total project budget, carrying the same technology and FF&E costs at the end. The last piece on there is just a breakdown of the elements and where just to show you kind of where the costs are in the construction, so you know what that is. As Scott alluded to, there's the next page, the third page in that book, which is the options and alternates. And these are just some things that we've thrown out as ideas. The design and construction team will continue to have more alternates and options as we go forward. But these are some of the things we've talked about and thought about to help either balance the budget or to get things that you've asked for to understand. So we'll kind of walk through those and give you a little idea of what those are. And I don't know, Jeff, if you can go back to where they're at. If we go down in order, can you kind of show us on the screen what those are? If we go to like the industrial tech, FCS music area, if that's possible. So one of the areas that we talked about that, and why we broke it out separately, is because this wasn't in the original program. It was kind of something that was added to it, was the renovation of the existing space for industrial tech, FCS, in the music area. So we just showed what that value was, that we think it is right now. So that's about $239,000. And these costs include all construction costs, and I think the design and soft costs are staying the same regardless. So that's why we just showed it that way. Is it all inclusive?
Is that one where she had said earlier this would be a very light remodeling, and then this would be the more extensive option in the north wing, the unused science rooms? Is that, or is this a different space?
I think that was more the kitchen, wasn't it? You were talking about?
No, that is this area. I think we'll work with Estes on the specifics and say, hey, we just want to put in a stud partition, save the existing floor, save the existing ceiling, do as little as possible to define those spaces, but be able to keep it in the project.
Okay.
So as we move forward, we have a design contingency.
Okay.
You know, and so we'll try to balance out getting those spaces. Worst case scenario, you do have several classrooms there that if we weren't able to put in divising walls, you could still use those spaces.
Yep.
I mean, ideally, we would like to finish them out properly.
And this would probably be a more accurate representation. This number is a more extensive remodel of those spaces.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like a gut and replace
Okay.
systems. Everything is all inclusive.
Not
Okay,
just,
that makes sense.
okay.
Yeah, so if we did something that was more just finishes,
Yeah.
finishes, that would be a lot less.
Okay.
Yeah, yep. So the number two, we talked about the different systems and different materials that we're using in the product. In the base number that we're utilizing right now, we have drywall partitions in like the learning spaces, admin. The gym area still has masonry walls, but it's more of the other areas that we've utilized a drywall partition system in those. So if we wanted to go back to full masonry, that's the value of that, about $750,000. One of the things that you $750,000.
750, okay.
One of the costs that you asked about is, Jeff, if you go to the learning space floor plan, and we talked about we have operable partitions at many of the areas in the learning area that are shown so that they can be opened up into that commons area or closed up. And one of the things that we talked about is having those operable partitions be glass so that you can actually see through them. And BLDD and us have done several projects with those glass partitions. They're very nice. That's a nice feature. But you wanted to see what the cost of those are, the premium over just operable panel partitions. So that's about $232,000 for those. And these would be the partitions that actually open up into the gathering spaces. So there's some between other spaces as well. They would still stay the regular operable partitions. One of the other things we're looking at is the type of material on the exterior walls. So we've talked a lot about precast and masonry. BLDD and Estes have done other projects that have used a panel system called a SIPS panel, which is a structurally insulated panel. Very energy efficient system, but also utilizes a cementitious panel on the outside that has all different features that can look like masonry, look like stone, look like a lot of different things. In fact, the pictures on the front cover is one of those that we did that has the SIPS panels and the cementitious panels on. So it's something that we looked at as an idea, again, of a way to help control costs. So, but if we did go back to a precast type exterior wall system, that premium is about $394,000. So again, these are just options that we can look at. Another question that you asked was if we had a full kitchen remodel in this project, what would that be? A whole kitchen renovation. So when Jean was up here, she talked about just adding some cooler and freezer space and some dry storage space. That's what we have in the base number right now. But if we looked at adding on an actual kitchen addition of about 3,200 square feet, that was about $1,072,000 to add that on. Kitchens are one of the most expensive spaces per square foot if you look at that, so there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into that. Then one of the things we talked about was if we did the First Avenue Road extension, just to give you an idea of what that cost may be. Hasn't really been designed, but we kind of have an idea of what road costs are. So with that extension, about $283,000 to extend that, and that extends not only the road, but the sewer and water and lights along there and all those kind of things, sidewalks. So that cost is shown there. One of the things we don't know about the site yet, and it was mentioned in the soils report, is if the soil will support standard concrete foundation systems without any type of soil stabilization. So one of the things they mentioned was possibility of rock columns for soil stabilization. So we don't know if that's going to be required yet. We hope not, but if it is, we kind of show the value of that in case it is. So we have that in there. That's about $317,000. Then you asked us what, if we right now we have a budget for a middle school gym. So if we go to that option with a competition size gym, it adds square footage and space and more things in it. So that's about $1 million more to go to that one. So you have that difference. You can tell that difference between those two. Then Gene also mentioned some square footage reduction if we did the option 2 piece. We were changing up some listen and media rooms that she showed you in that option 2. If we want to do that in option 1 as well, that's that cost savings to do that, to reduce that square footage, about $137,000. One of the things we talked about was the possibility of deferring the 5th grade classroom finishes and leave that space like shelved until phase 2. So there was $567,000 of savings difference there. We have a geothermal system, a VRF system in the base number, because that's what you were looking for. There's also a geothermal heat pump system. That's an additional $90,000 if we went to that type of system. Then there's some reductions in some different HVAC systems. If you wanted to look at like a water source heat pump system, that's $82,000 savings. There's a condensing unit VRF system, that's $164,000 savings. And then if we were going to rooftop air handling units, that would be a $246,000 savings. You'll see the square footages are less than the total project because the gymnasium area includes a rooftop unit system in all options. So that was going to be the standard anyway. This would be in the commons and in the learning spaces. So those are the options that we came up so far. Some of the things that will be driving getting BLDD going will be, one of those is the competition gym decision. If we have a middle school gym or competition gym, that's a big one for them. The learning spaces, if we reduce those size, changing that the footprint, anything we change the footprint is big for them. Changing like mechanical systems, things like that, that can be, you know, determined at a later date, but things that we change that impact the actual size and space of the facility are things that we would be looking to make decisions sooner than later. Is there questions? I went through that kind of quickly that I can answer for you.
Back to the SIBS walls, what is the exterior material that's?
It's right now and it could be a lot of things, but right now we're thinking about a cementitious panel, and those can take on any kind of look. They can be like a masonry product, they can be a stone panel appearance, they can be like a siding product. They have a lot of different kind of designs and features, so it really hasn't been determined yet, but it'd be probably something more to simulate like a precast and maybe precast and masonry.
And then what is the interior of those? Because my understanding it's insulation sandwiched between two materials, correct?
Yeah, yep, it's a structurally insulated panel that has insulation in there. On the inside would be drywall. It'd be drywall finished partitions.
You must have some estimated ideas on what a standard, I guess what I call a standard is, you know, a furnace or whatever and air conditioning, what that costs to heat this square footage against what it's gonna cost with the heat pump and all that stuff, how much, are we saving enough in utility costs to pay the additional cost for the heat pumps and them kind of things?
I think to save is a question, because I think you're going from, are you going from non-air conditioned to air conditioned space? So there's going to be increased costs for the air conditioning, so it isn't a trade-off. I think the rule of thumb is on geothermal or VRF systems is payback on the additional cost over a standard like rooftop unit is like 12 to 15 years, and then you see the energy savings. That can vary. Usually they'll run calcs, and we'd have the engineers run the calcs and see, based on your current load and what they project your future load would be, how long that payback period would be between the premium on the upfront cost versus life cycle costs.
Well, in 12 to 15 years, which one of those two systems would cost the most maintenance? I mean, is one gonna be wore out, and one still got some life expectancy left after 12 to 15 years? I mean,
Yeah, I think
got the
that,
original cost back, we don't mean it's not wore out at that time, we have to redo it.
yeah, the maintenance costs are not any higher on a geothermal or a VRF than it would be a standard rooftop unit. And I think sometimes now it's less cost, maintenance-wise. But those are things that we could, we will look at, and I think those are good questions to ask to make sure that we pick the right system that makes the most sense, not on the first cost, but what the operational costs are going to be and the maintenance costs for a long time.
Another question I want to ask first is, okay, so is the building got to be structurally built different if you're going to put all this weight on the ceiling, on the roof?
On the rooftop?
Yeah.
There are structural modifications that are made for rooftop units versus if we have something
So
different.
that's an additional cost too, is that considered into this?
Yeah, that's included in the cost, yes.
Because like Jim's looking at items 12, 13, and 14 on your list, that comes up to about $492,000. If that's if those were three things that were swapped, I mean, that's, like I think what he was getting at is how many years of utility savings does it take to recapture that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, last fall, we did visit schools that had gone both ways. One had a geothermal in a remodel, and the other was a new construction that they'd opted out of doing a geothermal because of the payback costs. But in thinking of that, we're also looking at our utility costs come out of our general fund, is this not correct? So we're trying to reduce our general fund expenditures so that we have more money for education, for paying teachers, for attracting teachers.
Yeah, Jason, one thing, those are either or options. So in the
They're
base
not
number, we have
They're
a
not combined.
a VRF
Oh, okay.
system, so
Makes
you
sense.
can only take one of those. It'd be nice if you could take all three, but
Well, another thing I was going to ask.
That was a good try.
That was a good try.
I wanted to ask too, solar panels, where do they fit in? There's no mention of them. I mean, I could see where they could be used to
Have we
reduce
contacted-
electricity costs or reduce heating costs. No mention of using that.
The what?
Solar panel.
Oh, solar.
okay.
I didn't.
That's a system we had not looked at. These are the ones that were recommended by our mechanical consultant engineer. But if that's something you wanted to look at, we certainly could. It is a higher upfront cost. We'll let you know that. So then it'd have to be, again, we want to look at the payback period and what that is. And how
Even
often.
more so than the VRF?
Yes.
But is that something that could be added, solar panels could be added later at not much more cost than would be originally? If we had, let's say we got extra money coming in sometime, we could add that to help reduce costs?
I think that industry's changing quite a bit, and if you design it accordingly so it's made to add those later, I don't see that's a lot of upfront costs.
Okay, thank you.
So total cost, can you give me a total cost for option one versus option two? I mean, I see in here, option two with a larger gym, $1,005,600, but then also the space, minus 137,562. Is that, can I take that 137 number right off of that million?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. That would be the total. So if we're at 16.7, we added $1 million for the gym, 17.7, then deducted that 100.
Then bring that.
Yes. And that's without making any other changes.
Yeah. 18.6, so you're looking at 18.5-ish
Yes,
for how option 2 lays on the.
correct. Isn't it?
No, I think the 1 million already includes that.
It includes the reduction in space?
I think it already includes that.
Okay.
I think that item number 9, the space reduction, is if you wanted to do the same thing to option 1.
Okay.
That would be the
That's what I was
number.
that's what I
So
was
the difference
wondering.
between option 1 and option 2 is the 1,000,000.
Million five.
5,670.
Okay.
Okay.
So with that, then we would get the spaces back in the learning studios, we would remain as if it was a smaller gym? Okay.
Yes.
All right, understood.
Switching gears slightly, we've talked a lot, and I know that it's hard to let option 2 drive our decisions for, or phase 2 drive our decisions for phase 1, but we're trying to be conscious of them, of course. If you look at, say, 2C versus 2D,
Are we done with Paul?
I don't know if this was something that you can address. What costs of renovation of, say, the south wing versus the new construction, is it even possible to ballpark a number on those types of things?
Sure.
And maybe, I don't know who's most appropriate.
Yeah, we haven't done that yet. We've been working up to
Yeah.
to a deadline, but we certainly can look at those and budget those out. And then the only thing is to factor in when it's going to happen. So that's the hardest part. If we think it's going to happen in 5 years or 10 years or 15 years, but we can put it today's dollars and say, here's what you think you should project, based on what the current inflation rate is for that amount of time. But it certainly can do. We have not done that yet, but that's possible to do that, Jason.
That's part of what's driving my decision and how we look at competition gym versus middle school gym in the first phase, and what we can do in the second phase of salvaging or renovation of our current gym versus building new, the cost comparison for that.
What we can do is kind of take our current cost per square foot that we're seeing on these other ones and project those on those other spaces and see what those values total up to.
Yeah, I think back on your thing again too, I think some of what we're trying to get at is that, consciously we want to try to save taxpayers many dollars as we can, and the reason we need to know those figures.
Yeah, if we
is
can
so
load up.
Tell whether we can afford to destroy one and build a whole new one, or we refurbish the old one. And taxpayers at least think that we're saving money.
And we should help you with that, because it's not, a lot of times we look at just those first costs, what are those first construction costs, but it's really those life cycle costs and the operation maintenance costs can far outweigh what those first costs are. So if you have a brand new building, you have a lot less maintenance and operation costs versus you have an old building that you have to put a lot into. So you really have to look at all three of those to make sure you get the best value for the
So we have to
taxpayer.
remember, we're starting out with a 50-year-old building on that end, too.
That leads to my question of, when we look at that, if there are any structural deficiencies in that, side of the building, and of course, maybe that would be looked at further in phase 2, but something that I'm trying to be conscious of.
Yeah, and I think we need to be true to ourselves in the journey we've gone on here. I mean, we started out, looking at how many different designs did you guys do initially, like 9 different designs. Some of them keeping part of the old school, some of them not, and we picked what we labeled the orange plan. And the orange plan does not include, extensive renovations of that wing, that old gym, keeping it, or that industrial arts wing. That whole area of the building has some problems. And so, I don't think we should second guess ourselves right now. I think that what we've picked was our best decision, and we need to stay true to that because, we've evaluated all of the facts leading up to that point. We just need to find out the best plan for building that middle school, and whether it is a competition gym or not, or we fundraise additionally for a competition gym to be built in tandem. There's a number of ways to do this, but okay, let's retract all the way back to the red plan. Okay, if there's anything that I can say over the past year or so that we've evaluated so many things in building this new school, the time, the money, the energy, I think that what we've labeled as the orange plan is so much better than what we had as the red plan. And so, let's give these kids a great school, and let's give them that wow factor and, the learning studios that they really deserve. Phase 2 will happen, but there's some ways that we can probably cut some costs there, as he's showing.
Looking at the site plan, the academic portion of the middle school, I think, spot on exactly what we've been asking for.
Absolutely.
The extracurricular spaces still struggle to relate to one another.
Yeah.
And how the commons relates to the gym, how it relates to the auditorium, how it relates to the second gym, it doesn't feel like it's there yet.
Mm-hmm.
So there may be an opportunity to still utilize part of that south wing. I don't know, but the way this is configured, it's struggling to find its identity as a building. It just doesn't feel like it flows the way that you all had envisioned it.
And what happened to the plan that we had looked at, that was the orange plan at Comet Drive, that did look like it flowed? Like,
The one that we approved in August?
yes,
That
that
we
plan where,
accepted and we're gonna move
where the
forward on?
building did lay out on the site, when completed the phases, if everything did follow through as planned, looked like the building had been here always. What happened to that?
Lots of
What
input.
was
Yeah,
the-
we got a lot of input. I think one of the first triggers was, we've got some fantastic views out of the learning studio looking to the east. In order to keep that in phase 2, then the next learning studio can't be right in front of it.
Don't give them in phase 1, give them in phase 2.
Give them the view in phase 2.
See,
Oh,
So block.
my understanding.
Give them the view when they're in high school, not in middle school.
And there can still be upper wall, there can still be light, there can be light at the upper part of the wall if that becomes, but to completely, I have a hard time dealing when I look at this too, that we're just building something that's so disconnected now that
I think that phase 1 captures quite a bit of it. Phase 2 is where it struggles to implement what we had seen or talked about. And
The
like I
gym
said,
still struggles to relate to the commons though,
Yeah.
right
Yes,
now.
and I agree with that too.
It doesn't feel like it all belongs
And
in
if you-
harmony.
If you put a middle school gym there, your restrooms are spot on where they need to be for the commons.
right.
But they're 100, 200 feet away from the gym. If there's 600 people in there, they've got to go a long distance to find a restroom. So that whole concept, to me, is struggling.
Yeah, and part of our struggle is trying to keep the square footage as small as possible for phase 1 so that we could hit the $17.6 million, and rearranging things. I think, Jeff, can you go to option 1, master plan? Phase 2, sorry. Keep going. You can see how the competition gym, the auditorium, creating that second kind of commons corridor. Let's see if I don't know if I laser through here. This all functions fairly well. Adding additional public restrooms and kind of creates a cohesive plan. Whether or not we rotate this learning studio is something that we can figure out when we get to phase 2,
It'll be
whether or not it's a
decided much
priority to
later.
maintain the views from the existing studio, or whether it makes more sense to swing that around, to create that plan that is more like what we talked about back in August.
Because that move right there saved us about 2,000 square feet of moving this corridor access instead of coming around to the gym, going straight through the gym. That saved us about 2,000 square feet. That's budget that really helps us.
It sticks out from the front of the building. It doesn't look like it belongs right there. If you're on Salisbury, you can't really tell where the front entrance is. Is it over here on the corner where the auditorium is? Is it around the curve of the gym where the administration section is? The real prominent front entrance is on the back side of the building.
Right.
And so
That nobody can
you
see.
confuse people with, how do I get into the building with that? And still getting into that middle school gym, it's awkward through the hallway and then around the other side from the commons.
Yeah.
I originally thought that in August that the middle school system was going to look off to the northeast and that the high school was going to look off to the southwest and the courtyard was going to be in the middle. Right now, we've got a parking problem. You want a gymnasium for 1,500 people, you got to find a place to park them so they don't have to walk a mile and a half. You know, because a lot of them are grandparents and whatever else that come to see the grandkids play, and I mean, we're not looking at the younger, the kids' generation, but,
Right.
you know, in a way. So I guess I thought we'd have two kind of main entrances, and with the superintendent being in another building, if they had high school or middle school wants that people to come up here to visit, they could either know one way or the other, to go one door or the other, not they wouldn't want to walk through the whole building to get to
Right.
middle school from the high school side, or either vice versa.
Okay.
That's what I kind of was under the impression last August, that was going to kind of look, the courtyard could be in the middle, in the back door, so to speak, of the two buildings.
So in looking at that, for Phase 2B, like you have it there, you've got the high school learning spaces, and then you've got, in Phase 2, the middle school learning spaces. Are we proposing that the middle school students are in that, what is labeled here, high school space in Phase 1?
So in Phase 1, we need to build middle school learning studio. It didn't make any sense, and we needed a way to tie into the existing high school. So this location that's currently labeled high school on this Phase 2 is middle school space. But because this north wing becomes the high school exploratories, it doesn't make any sense for high school students to traipse through
Yeah.
the middle school learning studios, which is why we're suggesting in Phase 2 that the new studio become the new middle school studio, the existing middle school studio become high school spaces, so that it has that closer relationship to the exploratories.
Well, I'm not sure that I agree with, I mean, we've had all these middle school teachers engaged in telling you how to build their learning spaces, but not the high school teachers, and now we're going to swap them out. I really think your best idea was first, you know, just slap those two learning studios together face to face, and don't worry about the view. You know, I mean, if we're going to lose some outside space, you know, with all those beautiful windows in the commons area, maybe push that learning studio over so you've got a small courtyard there, you know, just maybe it's, I don't know, 15 feet or whatever it is. So you can still maintain that glass.
Okay.
But I think that your first idea was best, you know, just marry those two spaces together, and I think it's more cohesive that way.
Is there any way to put the middle school back to where it was, build that first, and then come in between there and put the high school space?
Yes and no. Yes, we're utilizing part of that north wing for middle school resource spaces, so that's about 3,000 square feet. If we didn't have that connection there, we would need to build that square footage new
Okay.
at a cost of a couple $100 a square foot. That comes out to about $600,000 more. So there are some ramifications to that.
But that would give us that whole north wing then, as you said, for the high school exploratories in Phase 2.
Yes. We can absolutely look at, you know, moving the Phase 2 Learning Studio back to kind of the configuration we had before. That's not a problem to do that, and we can keep looking at the middle school gym and how you get into that and that connection to the commons. We can keep investigating that as well.
Wouldn't that concept of having the two buildings back to back with the courtyard in the middle, that'd be a security thing too, that the people, if kids are out there setting at picnic tables or whatever, tables and visiting or whatever else, they'd be secure. You wouldn't have to worry
Right.
about somebody from the outside, you know, or whatever.
talking about too, because that's one of the things we're looking at, safety.
Right.
Students while they're there. And then another, one of the things I didn't like, and I think Scott didn't either, is all the steps that were out in front.
Well,
Steps
we
an
do
hour,
have a challenge with the topography.
Yeah, I
We have a
read that.
lot of slope. We're working with our civil engineers to try to balance out the amount of fill that we're going to have to put in. I think we're talking about roughly about a 4-foot drop from the main floor of the building to the ring road. So we will have to have some ramps and stuff to
Yes, but we're
accommodate
going to
that.
have 50 to 80 years of challenges with
Steps.
custodial staff trying to keep the snow and ice off of them as well. So, from a personal note and a note as far as a board member, the fewer steps you have going into a building, the better off we are. Even if you had to put in an entryway under a roof with steps inside, would be way better, and a wheelchair lift or ramp or whatever, would be way better than steps outside.
Okay.
Especially seeing your extremely long ramps and steps outside on the north side of a 2-story building that will never see sun for 3 or 4 months out of the year, when it needs to see sun to melt ice and snow, you're gonna have major problems there. And I'm sure Jerry or future buildings and grounds directors and custodial staff would like to see fewer steps and possible outside.
Well, we will see what we can do, and we'll share with you if there's cost ramifications to that, because I know we're looking at a considerable amount of fill on the site already, but.
Well, and it's a considerable amount of concrete to put all those steps in too,
I
so
never thought of,
if we reduce concrete usage, can we put up something else instead?
We'll take a look at it, absolutely.
Because I hadn't seen any steps to this facility until Friday afternoon when this came in email.
Right, because we were doing concept design and we
I
hadn't done
understand.
the survey work yet.
one concept, I guess we could possibly look at, or they could look at, would be maybe heating the steps would be better than having to shovel them all the time too, but that gets expensive too.
The fewer steps outside, the better
Better
off we'll all
Got it.
be.
I agree.
Positive comments I want to make. The tree house, I think, is more creative. I think you might catch a little more imagination. I know it was because of costs, but I do, as an artist, I think they're going to have more creativity with that type of treehouse. I also wanted to commend you on the learning studios and how you
Thank you.
incorporated the special learning and just the special education with, I think, just them having their own private restroom, knowing what the facilities and how it's handled here, giving them that amount of privacy and still being integrated is excellent.
Thank you.
So thank you for that.
Another question, it's not a question, but it's a comment, I guess. I don't know if everybody's aware of it or not, but $250,000 was given to the fairgrounds to build an educational facility for youth to learn on our fairgrounds, but now they're going to raise another $500,000 and they're going to build a state-of-the-art building that they're going to rent for weddings and whatever else besides. So I don't know how much extra space we need to incorporate into the school, if it's a double purpose thing for thinking we're going to do some things like that or not. I don't know. It's just a comment that, I don't know if you were aware that that's what they're working on now, is to do that at the fairgrounds,
No, I wasn't.
build a state-of-the-art.
Jean, can I ask
Wasn't
you a
that
couple
first-
questions on the use of the design space within the learning studios? Now, I think I had read somewhere that that's going to be space for family consumer science as well as art and industrial arts, is that right? All three of those?
Yes.
So that's the.
But not
cla-
exclusively to those spaces.
Okay, because is that the classroom space, so to speak, for them? And then what are we building in the north wing that is in addition to that? Is
So
that-
the way the labs and studios are intended to be used is that they can be used by a variety of different groups, and they will support different activities. So they'll support art class, they'll support family consumer science, they'll support industrial tech, or any other project-based learning or activity that another teacher might come up with. So in order to allow that kind of flexibility, providing those specific subject matters a resource room where they can keep materials that only they use, and have an office and a resource space so that they don't have to keep all those things in the studios. Because we're asking an art teacher that's going to teach 5 different grade levels in 5 different learning studios. You know, she can't, or she or she can't keep all of it in one room necessarily. So if that's kind of their home base for some of their resources, then when they want to do a painting unit, they take their painting to the 5th grade learning studio. They set up in that you know, drawing room or lab space. They use it there for however many weeks they use it, and then they can put it back in their resource space or move it to a different lab. So, you know, the art may take place in the drawing lab, or they may be in the flex lab if they're doing something that doesn't require quite as much space, you know, for that period of time.
When we get to high school, are we still proposing that same method?
No, and for what we've talked about for high school, the north wing will be remodeled for all those exploratory. So science will still be in those science rooms because they're new. Art still would be in that wing, but maybe the rooms are configured differently. Maybe they're bigger, maybe they're smaller, maybe there's 3 rooms instead of 2 rooms. Agriculture classes, industrial tech, all of those
And
would be in that north wing.
And family consumer science would be
Yes.
in that north wing then?
Yes.
Okay.
There's always potential when you get to phase 2, which we don't know when that will be. You know, if we say, well, this program makes sense to be closer to the kitchen that we're building, perhaps that program space moves there,
Yeah.
and something else goes in its place.
Okay.
Can you give me an idea on the cafe space, what goes on there, or what that's kind of new?
So the cafe space at the studios is intended to be 2 things: a serving area for lunch for the students, and the teaching stations for the cooking units for family and consumer science. So that's the intention for that it becomes that dedicated space for, they need a stove, a microwave, a sink to teach that kind of class for family consumer science. We're not going to put 5, you know, ranges in the Explore Lab. That doesn't really make sense. So we would do that on both floors. So they would have two family consumer science teaching stations for the kitchen unit.
But it would also serve a purpose.
But it would also serve on a typical day as a servery for students for lunchtime.
Just, you know, my comments here, building on Dr. Cox, you know, I really like the studio space and all of that. I think that's definitely exactly what we've been talking about and where it is. And again, you know, I agree with the way other things, you know, the extracurricular stuff is added on, how it flows is a concern of mine. Whether it's competition or practice gym, you know, there's certainly concerns. You know, parking, of course, event parking is one biggie that I looked at. You know, I strongly favor competition gym in phase 1, but I recognize how, you know, if we have 1,500 seats in here, where do we park these people in relation to that event? And what I see here currently is that it's still the same parking, it's just a much further.
It's a longer
away.
walk, right?
You know, I also try to be aware or conscious that, of course, a lot of that can be addressed in phase 2. So I struggle with what are we going to work well, or how do we make it work in phase 1? Or is it simply we're going to fix it in phase 2 or address it in phase 2 and kind of deal with it until that happens? I don't know. And maybe there are more considerations to how the gym space or the, you know, fits with the site plan, I guess. I don't know.
Well, originally, when we talked about it a while back, phase 2 is looking at the event entry being from the west and having parking kind of at the top of the hill.
Sure.
So at this point, we weren't adding more than what you needed because you already have what we might term enough. But that's another question. Do we want to move that parking up, or do we want special additional parking on the top of the hill that's right off that main event entry?
Yeah.
Can you go to phase 1 of this plan?
Such as where the white shed is even?
Sure.
That we could move?
Because it comes along with, we've been given a price of a little over $1 million at the competition gym, but we have to address the parking also with that. So that number is going to have to increase. because you're right, it's too far. We're going to become known as the district, if you're going to Charles City, bring your walking shoes
Yeah.
and a camel pack because it's a hike.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're talking a block or two. Depending upon where you park in that parking lot, if you come late, you're gonna walk the entire parking lot plus around the back of the building.
And I don't know if that's what we want to, the image we want to, we just need to get it right.
I'm gonna agree with Lorraine. I like what we saw in August. That's what I want to keep moving forward on as an ultimate goal. Because I think that was your best work, and taking a look at everything on the site, I think you gave us the best option in August. Somehow we need to get back to that
Okay.
to figure out how this all flows. That would be my opinion.
My only comment to that is that I think we also, on the flip side, we've got to be conscious of our existing, what's there in the south end and the cost of renovation versus the cost of new, and what that number is. I mean, I can't make, if that number's the same, if renovation versus building new is the same, then I'm all in, this here. If it's a $3 or $5 million difference, and in phase two, we can tout that we're being responsible and keeping the tax rate as low as possible by doing some of this, then I think it should be explored. I think it's a tough sell to tear down one gym that could be potentially renovated and build it a few hundred feet away. Same thing with some of the other spaces, if they're structurally sufficient the way it is and can be renovated inside and out considerably cheaper, I think it's far too early in this process to write that off. But the concepts that were being showed allow the flexibility to that, like you've said, and those decisions, are to be made down the road to some extent, but also being aware of them today as we look at this. So, my opinion where we stand is that I think that phase one does accomplish a lot of what we've talked about, other than how, the way I simplified look at it is parking and event coordination is what I would say, struggles with that. Otherwise, phase one really accomplishes a lot of what we did talk about back then. We just seriously look at phase two down the road. I don't know.
And throw another wrench into it. Unless the five of us are sitting here when phase two is approved by the voters and approved by a board, everything we're talking about can be changed 20 times before a spade is dug on phase two.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's just, look how many times things have changed since the election of the fall of 13. Look how many different options the four of us that are sitting here looked at before you came on board. Who knows what'll happen in phase two? Let's try and get phase one right so that whatever happens in phase two can be added on
It can
with
be debated.
ease
Yeah.
and debated later.
Building on that, my comments are that I like option two with the competition gym. I, of course, still have the outstanding questions of parking, for the events, for the gym as it would sit, and if that can be addressed somehow, some way. And I recognize that money is always the answer to that question. But, in doing a little bit of math here, our current project budget of $17.6 million, adding $1 million for the cost of the gym, but if we, to 18.6, if we were to look at rooftop handling, air handling units, taking $250,000 off of that number, brings us down to 350-ish, or 18,350. So that brings us in line with where maybe we need to talk with Matt, and if he thinks it's responsible to look at a number of that sorts, that gives us an avenue to accomplish all of what we've talked about in phase one wanting, along with the competition gym.
But we have to remember there are elements on this, like number 7, that we're facing a $300,000 addition
Yeah.
that we don't know if we need or not.
Absolutely. And when would we expect to have that answer?
I'm hoping within the next month we should know that answer.
So my concern with adding the competition gym now is the parking, and I think we have a better option in Phase 2 of adding the competition gym, either in addition to a Phase 2, if everything were to be torn down on the south wing, or if we save, if you so decide, whoever sits here, that they want to remodel, of remodeling that existing space that's there now and turning it into a competition gym. Parking is closer. That puts your competition gym next to your parking if you so decide to keep that south wing. As a citizen of Charles City, I want this to be done right, and I want us to be proud of this, and I want this to be something that we look at and we're glad we made this move for the next 50 years. I don't want this to be looked at as something, oh yeah, we did it. Yeah, it's up there, we did it, it's done. But I've said that all along.
I guess I got some thoughts on, if complicates the whole thing, but if the circles weren't there, that'd be a good area to put a parking lot, so that then you could design your auditoriums and your gymnasiums, easy access to that area. But the problem is, what are we going to do? What would we do with the students? What if we end up tearing down part of the high school before we get a high school built? And I don't think that it's fair to, or really, I shouldn't say fair, maybe that ain't the word to use, but the middle school students, the middle school staff have worked hard at designing what they want for middle school. And if we was to move the high school into there, that wouldn't be, they have no input on what they're gonna get. They'd be just stuck with what the middle school.
I think we would go into
So I
that
don't think that'll
knowing
work.
that there would be renovation costs involved
Yep.
to do some interior renovation
We'd
work.
have to be renting portable classrooms or something. for
That
a
would
year.
be added on to Phase 2,
Yep.
you're talking
As,
about?
yeah, if that becomes high school space, we would work with the high school staff to figure out, do these spaces work for you? Talk to the middle school staff, how did you use these spaces? And then determine what changes needed to be made, to those interior. Do we need to gut the inside? Can we keep the basics and just make some minor modifications to make them work? Because certainly project-based learning isn't going anywhere. And having those lab spaces is not going to be a hindrance to you in the future. You can certainly use those lab spaces for any function that you want to. And I think, and I'll let Dr. Cox speak to this, I think the trend moving forward is going to be more project-based learning, more STEM-type learning, those kinds of things. There's no reason those rooms couldn't be used.
As flexibly as they're designed.
Right, by high school students. Maybe there's some different finishes and a few upgrades you would want to do in some of the spaces, but really the bones should be functional.
The same.
I agree with that, and I would want high school staff to have input on how that looked, because to just say you're going to move into a space you had no input on
Right.
doesn't serve the interests.
Well, and I think by the time we get to Phase 2, there's going to be upgrades that need to be done anyways, regular maintenance items and things, and it's a good time to step back and say, hey, what other changes do we need to make, and how would you like to use this space? The square footage is still going to be there, and it's still going to be usable. But certainly, you would want to make some modifications.
In a way, the courtyard also gives us some flexibility to bring that as one kind of cohesive piece. So it gives us a little bit of more opportunity.
I really
So
think
we're
that-
approaching about 12 minutes left as to what I had set for this agenda item tonight. That's just a personal thing that we had talked about for an hour and a half. Is there anything you need from us tonight?
Well, it sounds like no decisions are going to be made tonight. You need more information. So
And
we're going
time to digest.
And time to digest it. So we're going to come back. We're going to revisit the August plan and kind of look at how that plan that you liked flowed, how modifications have been made since, and what the ramifications are of that. Look at the relationship between the gym and the commons for option 1 for sure, but also look at option 2, how can we improve parking? And then the other thing would be to look at the mechanical systems that we're offering. What is the long-term life cycle cost implications for those? First costs, operating costs, maintenance costs, and give you a better set of data for you to make that decision. So I think those are, did I miss anything? Those are the
We
things.
have that in 3 weeks for a board meeting? since we're a week behind normal now from, you were supposed to have been here a week ago, and we postponed you on purpose, which was fine because we weren't here last Monday night either.
Yeah.
Is this feasible in 3-week time frame, or are we
Yeah.
looking at a 5-week and have you at the second meeting in January?
No, I think the 3-week, I think the 3-week.
Okay.
Paul, does that work for your team? Okay.
And I think there's
I
one
gotta
more
agree.
thing we need to talk about, and that is the kitchen. We haven't discussed that, but, you know, as I look at Phase 1, Option 1, I'm wondering, how are we getting the food to that serving area or to the cafes, you know? I mean, I know there's carts and all kinds of things, but, you know, we've got to take that food all the way through the high school to get it there. I'm really feeling like this school, this middle school, should be self-supporting on its own. In other words, if Phase 2 never happens, we need to make sure Phase 1 is a self-supporting, efficient plan. And so I'm in favor of it having a kitchen in Phase 1 versus the competition gym. I mean, it's a difference between needs and wants. We need a kitchen. We want a competition gym, perhaps. You know, I've said at the board table many times, too, that I'd really love to see a competition gym in Phase 1, but that kitchen is a real big hiccup for me. So, you know, I'd really like to see us do something in that Phase 1 that has a kitchen. Maybe it can be enlarged and expanded in Phase 2. I don't know.
Okay. Well, we can absolutely take a look at it, how that might work. Talk to Dan, talk to our food service consultant about.
Where it might fall into play in Phase 1, so that we can see all of that in 3 weeks?
Yeah, because what's your best, I mean, what do you think is going to be best for us to do?
I think the most efficient thing for you to do is to use the existing high school kitchen to make modifications to it. Having one kitchen versus 2 kitchens is always going to be more cost effective for you. And looking at the cost to do the minor modifications, we're looking at $100,000 or less for that versus $1 million for a new kitchen with double the staff and all of those kinds of things.
Was the
Okay.
$1 million kitchen in what you talked about tonight, is that just large enough to feed the prepare food and feed 5th through 8th grade? Or is that large enough to prepare food and feed 5 through 12?
I would say it's probably somewhere in between. I think our goal was to build one kitchen once.
Yeah, if we were gonna build one kitchen once, it needs to feed 5 through 12
Yeah.
plus.
Right. Kitchens are kind of tricky with doing expansions later with the way the equipment is set up and those kinds of things. I can talk to Ed and see if there's a way to do a smaller kitchen now and then add on to it, you know,
Yeah.
for later, but,
I think we want to know for sure if we're building the kitchen.
okay. Yeah, no, the 3,200 square feet is a kitchen for all grade levels,
But your
5 through
consultant-
12.
But your consultant was confident that minor modifications were sufficient and would be efficient at feeding.
I think there were some comments that there's some existing equipment that needs to be repaired or replaced, that kind of thing, in that kitchen that the staff had said.
Well-
But he was confident with the added storage, cooler, and freezer, that they would be able to function in that kitchen to make meals for the 800 students.
And we've got equipment in the room behind you all that we can take up there and move around as well. Did you have something, Jim, before I
Yeah,
open it up to the floor?
I agree with what your philosophy is, that we go back to the August plan, and I'm just thinking here, if it don't turn out feasible to keep any of the south wing and to destroy it or get rid of it and rebuild, that a lot of that hill could be moved down to parking lot level by moving it around, and then you wouldn't have the steps in front of you.
Yeah.
You could cut that hill down at the gym, the old gym, if we end up destroying that gym with sets on and all that stuff, and get it down to the main parking lot level or close to it, then you wouldn't have steps to worry about. So that'd be something I think to look at, and when we start talking about looking into Phase 2 is,
Right.
you know, if we decide that it don't become economical to save it.
Well, we want to build the ring road at its final elevation.
Yep.
We only want to build the ring road once.
Yeah.
And there's only so much we can build it up and make everything work. Our civil engineers are very frustrated with us because we're like, well, what can we do that? Well, what about that?
But you could lower the hill. Could lower the hill, you know. If the buildings weren't there, you could cut that hill.
Well, there's
off.
there's buildings there.
There's buildings there.
You won't be able to do it until after phase 2 is completed
Well,
and people
right.
are moved in.
I mean, we can do anything if we throw enough money at it. Absolutely. We
That's always the
can.
answer.
Is
we
there
can
anything
do-
else from the board? I'm going to push and move on and ask if there are any comments from the public on the presentation that we've all listened to and conversed in the last hour and 25 minutes.
Can I add one more?
Yeah, got to come up to the microphone and identify yourself.
I'm Joel Behrens, I'm the head custodian here. And when we started, they had a meeting down here, and I asked what input you needed from us, they said, we're not ready yet. They had a meeting up in the library, went up there, they said that meeting was just for teachers, they'd contact custodians later, never did. And then we had a Have Your Say meeting last week. I asked Mr. Cox about some of the input that us custodians would have and on like room sizes and stuff like that, and he says we're too late. And I liked your comment, Mr. Dite, on that we need to have some say in this. So, anybody want to answer this?
May I
Go
say
ahead.
something?
Well,
Oh, go ahead, Dick.
You were involved in last
Yeah.
week's Have Your Say.
the room size we talked about, and I said that's all been done. You were asking about front entries and
Right,
some other
that-
things.
That too.
And I said, come tonight, because the architects are here. This will be your opportunity to ask some questions. And so-
But my big concern is that us custodians were totally left out in the dark. And I don't think that's fair when we take care of the buildings.
I don't,
I can address it. We're gonna have a whole nother, we're still in design development, so it's not too late. We'll be coming back for another set of meetings, and we absolutely want to talk to you. But right now, we don't know if we're having a competition gym or, the plan is still really not settled yet. So we will meet with you, and we will get all of your input, and it's not too late. Since we're still in design development and even into construction documents, we'll still be able to go back and forth. So I apologize if we didn't get to you when we met with the teachers the first time, but we will meet with you.
Because that was one of my concerns is like the entryways, not to have them like a cove because all the leaves blow in there.
Right.
Every time a door opens, they're all in the building. And then we got to clean them up. The
And I'm
building
gonna-
looks terrible that way.
I'm going to do what I can to get rid of the steps outside, so you're not shoveling 4 times a
Awesome.
day.
well,
Okay?
I think you guys need to have some input on, when we get down to deciding what we're gonna put down for floors, because you guys got the idea on what is easier to maintain and keep looking nice too, and the easiest way to do it and whatever else. I think we need some input on how to design the interior floors and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I would say we're getting close to the point where Jerry, Buildings and Grounds, and the custodians will be involved in the conversation. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have any comments?
Doug Lindeman. 2 comments, I guess, on your Phase 1. Keep in mind that around this building, we have about 6 blocks of city street where the cars can pass with parking on both sides. And as I look at this plan with maybe 48 new parking spaces to the north and east of the school, I think you're way short on parking. And if you just put in a very narrow street up there without parking on both sides, I think you're fundamentally flawed. Number 2, I think you're going to have to accept in your decision matrix that Phase 2 will never pass in this community over the next 5 to 10 years. So just make sure that whatever you come up with in Phase 1 is something you can live with for 5 or 10 years. Just keep that in mind. These plans are not passing throughout the state, and it's not going to pass in this community. Just keep it in mind.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments?
Can I make a comment yet?
Yeah.
Or Scott? I appreciate all the work that you guys have did
BLDD and Estes and whatever else, because you give us some good examples of what it could look like, and it's just, I'm sorry that I don't quite agree with what we want it to look like, but you did a good job of presenting other options that we hadn't looked at before, and now we've got some ideas that where we don't want to go for sure. So I appreciate your work.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Are we gonna look at an idea on the next date for meeting, or is that, are you gonna talk about that?
Meeting as far as
The next time that they're gonna come and,
Our next regular meeting.
3 weeks from tonight,
January 12th.
we have a
January 12th.
regular meeting? Is that 3 weeks or?
that's
3. Yep.
January 12th is the next regular
Okay,
meeting.
so January 12th.
4 weeks.
4 weeks, okay. There's an extra week in there because there's 31 days in December, sorry. So that gives you 4 weeks total.
Right, if you wanted it to
Well,
be
you're
3
only gonna
weeks.
get 3.5 because we want the information by Friday afternoon.
If you wanted it to be 3 weeks and be a week earlier, that's totally fine
Okay.
as well,
No, that's,
to keep things moving along.
Okay.
what do you think?
And if you don't want it to
Regular
decide tonight,
meeting?
that's fine too.
Just get to work and we'll call you.
Sounds good.
I don't, nobody's really up on saying we want to meet on the 5th right off the bat, so.
I'm not opposed to that.
I'm not opposed to that either.
I will be out of town.
You're still divided over whether or not to renovate the south wing or not. You're still divided over the competition gym or the smaller gym. You're still divided over how to relate the high school space to the middle school space, to the other high school space. We're going to have some more discussions about how we get to consensus on this. If we can do that on the 12th, great. If it's going to take a couple of meetings, then you may want to meet on the 5th in addition to the 12th.
But you're out of town on the 5th.
Yeah, I'll be out of town on the 5th, but, you
So
know,
that
if you guys
leaves
want
that
to
out.
meet.
May I ask another question? If you can have this done before the 12th, is it possible to get this size prints to us to look at instead of 2 days before, if we could get them a week early?
Possibly.
I mean, it's so hard to read just what comes out on the Chromebook, but this here is very understandable. If we could get something from,
Yeah,
in this size, sent down here so we
We
can pick
could
it up here.
probably have them printed here at a local print shop
Okay.
for you on 11 by 17,
Yeah,
so that you
I really
can.
appreciate this bigger, being able to.
Stop by my office, I can print the 11 by
large.
17s as
I
well.
know, but-
It's not in wonderful color, but it's in good black and
I
white.
like the color.
That costs more, Jim.
Okay.
Do we have
Through
enough?
the, I don't know, the 11th or something.
Do I want to meet
Or
on,
the
I
10th.
was wondering,
Another night?
do we have enough materials here to have like a true work session on maybe the 29th to come, try to work through some of the things like Dr. Cox said?
December 29th? I'm out of town.
You're out of town?
Yeah.
We could have a work session on the week before the 12th,
Fifth?
and Lorraine wouldn't be here, but we'd have a work session and have rough drafts of this again, we could talk about.
We can do that.
Like I said, like a true dedicated
Yeah,
work session?
yeah, just a work session, that's all there would be, is this.
Just this. So
No
that
action, no
hopefully
nothing.
that
we could.
those would be refined.
Come to a consensus. I don't want to
Well,
cut you out, Lorraine.
oh, no, that's fine.
are you here on the 6th,
No, I'm gone that whole week. We're,
the whole week?
mhm.
I'd rather not have these important
Well-
decisions without a full board.
Well, we
11,
wouldn't
10,
make
get
a
back
board
on the
decision at a
10th.
Workshop.
Well, but we'll form a consensus without
Okay, I agree.
a full board. And I don't want to do that when we're, my personal opinion, when we're spending this kind of money and we're talking about the future, I think we all need to be here.
Okay.
Are there any kind of priorities that we can line up now for BLDD, now that we have this information? For example, you know, yay or nay on a competition gym, yay or nay on a kitchen? Anything? Just to direct them a little bit further? No?
I have my personal opinions.
Yeah.
If they're going to go back and look at the August drawings and revisit that, you might want to wait for that input.
Let's just wait till the 12th.
Yeah, then we could have a work session after the 12th. We'll go over
If
whatever
we
they
need to,
presented on the
we can
12th.
schedule
We need a
something for
work
later
session.
in that week,
Yep,
Okay.
yep,
right?
yep.
Everybody,
Then we're all here.
we don't have plans for like the 15th.
You got it.
of January on a Thursday if we needed to?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to agenda item 6, safety presentation by Mr. Gable.
I want to take a tiny break and let folks go, so we can stand up.
Sure, let's take, before Mr. Gable, before you begin, let's take about a 5-minute recess for people to do what they need to do.
I'm starting the counter right now.
Thank you. So the time is 7:57, and we'll call the meeting back to order. Now, Mr. Gable,
Okay.
the floor is yours.
Thank you. Just wanted to update you, the board, as to what we have done, some things going on as far as safety goes around the district. We have continued to have meetings with the police department, Charles City Police Department, and Floyd County Emergency Management. We had meetings with them in August and October, again discussing protocols, where do we want to go, what sort of procedures do we want to follow, what philosophy do we want to have as far as intruder alerts, evacuations, and also what do we want to do for evacuations if and when it comes to having that sort of situation happening. But we've also done some simple things, restructuring shelter procedures here at the middle school. We're using the basements and locker rooms. Jerry Mitchell has done a great job. Cameras on the outside accesses to all the buildings. Buses have cameras. You've probably seen a long list of improvements that we've made safety-wise. What we were able to do that was the most impactful was we had Officer Captain Anderson come in and speak to the administrative team in October, and then we invited him back to talk with staff on November 26th. The day before we got out for Thanksgiving break. And his presentation was very well received. Many comments were passed along to me, both on a Google Doc and privately, and in some emails and some personal comments too, about how much the staff appreciated that conversation and that information that he provided, how he instructed them to have a little bit different mindset, how to think about safety in a different modality. We as educators, we're encompassing, we're welcoming. If you want to think in true safety terms, you better have a little bit more critical thinking mind as far as these people aren't good. These people that come in, they aren't nice, they aren't right, there's something wrong, and we need to do some things differently. But the whole concept of Captain Anderson's presentation was called Run, Hide, Fight. And it's a real simple philosophy. The first thing you do is you run if there's danger somewhere. And the second thing you do is if you can't run far enough, then you hide. And finally, if you have to, you put up a fight. You don't stand there and you don't take it. Again, it's a different mentality. And Captain Anderson really stressed, yeah, this can happen anywhere. We know that can happen. It's happened in many different places across the country and across the world. There are some possible indicators that we should be aware of and look for. The way a student acts, what a student pays attention to, what they write in papers, maybe how they interact with people. There's a lot of signs to look for. Captain Anderson also stressed, kind of what I was just mentioning, we need to have a survival mindset, not just for the workplace, but also personal safety-wise. As you go into the malls, as you're sitting in this building, what's your avenues, what's your access, what are you going to do if something bad happens here, if the wrong person comes in? Do you know how many exits there are? Do you know the type of materials that you have at your disposal that you could use as weapons too? So it's a very different, again, it's a very different mindset that you have to have. And again, if we're going to protect our kids, we need to have that consideration. He stressed, do not, it's a non-negotiation. You don't negotiate with these people. You've got to act. You've got to assess, and you've got to act. Action beats reaction was one of the phrases that he used. Confrontation can prevent further problems from occurring. His presentation took an hour. The final 15 minutes, there were several questions from the staff. They wanted to know about, common backgrounds of these students, of people
not just students, but students and/or people that participated in these types of acts. How did they act? How did these individuals act around others? Did they do anything as far as cruelty to animals, things like that? And again, you mentioned there's some indicators of things that they watch and pay attention to, that if you are aware that these people are looking at certain videos, doing certain types of things, that would be an indicator that they may have some of these tendencies. But again, it was a great conversation. It was a great conversation with Captain Anderson at the end of that period. We're going to reproduce that conversation with the teachers. Were the only ones who participated, the teachers and administrators, on November 26th. On December 23rd, the day before we go for Christmas break, we have Captain Anderson coming in again, and in the library he's going to present to all of the teachers throughout the district, secretaries, business manager, the cooks, custodians, and so we've given them time, and our paraprofessionals, we're going to give them time and opportunities to all get to this presentation so that they can hear it as well. Just to summarize, some of the feedback from the staff was, well, we need to practice, and they all realized that. And they all went back to their rooms, I think. That's kind of what they were instructed to do. Sit down and take a minute and think about, what are you going to do? How did this presentation impact you differently? And again, if you Google Run, Hide, Fight, you're going to see very common presentation, and probably the same one that Captain Anderson was using in this presentation. We need to practice, not necessarily with the students, but staff members need to evacuate the building, go through all the different opportunities or ways that they could exit the building. And again, the staff just wants to have the participation in the trainings. Some of the next steps we're looking at is to set up or create those trainings, have more conversations with staff. One thing I know has already happened at the high school and for several teachers, and here with at least a couple of teachers at the middle school, having the police officer stop in the rooms and say, here's some things that you could do. Here's some things to think about. And we want to continue that process and have the officers visit as many rooms, in fact, all the rooms, and visit with the teachers. So we need to kind of set up that opportunity for that to happen. After the first of the year, we want to host a parent community Run, Hide, Fight presentation, invite the students in, along with the parents, obviously. And then we also need to figure out how we're going to have these conversations with students. Elementary, don't know, probably not. High school, we can probably have those conversations to some degree. High school, there might be ways to include them. Those are things that we still have to iron out, how we're going to work with that. We also want to continue with task force as far as safety goes, including all types of Charles City School District employees, community members, safety personnel from throughout the community, and so on. But we know that we need to communicate, have better communication on the sites that we are going to attend for any evacuation needs, and we need to communicate with the safety personnel for command center as how we're going to communicate with parents when one of these situations, if one of these situations would ever arise. So, and it's not just about, that last part's not just about intruders, but say, like last year, there was a fire across the street. What if that would evolve, what if that would have been more hazardous and coming directly into the building rather than being down the street a half a block? That missed us. What if we would have a gas tanker or ammonia truck, ammonia wagon tip over, have an accident like that right in front of the high school, or right in front of this building? How are we going to move people out of the way? So those are things that we have to consider.
Any questions for Mr. Gable?
Just positives. I mean, that's my opinion. I mean, it is it's unfortunate to go through some situations, but a lot of learning comes out of some. You know, we've had a number of things, and it seems in the last 6 months, or several of them, that we could utilize as learning opportunities, where thankfully there were good outcomes. But like I said, you're looking at that, taking the time to learn from it, to implement. It'd be more efficient in the future.
It's a dark topic, and but the way the comments that the feedback I got from staff was saying, thanks for opening our eyes, thanks for presenting that information. There's some of the videos and pictures and graphics that he shows, yeah, could be a little bit shocking, but it's not a shock value presentation. It's not one you could get far worse on network television than what Captain Anderson's presenting to our staff members. And what he would present, it's the same presentation. He said, he did say, thanks for telling me I have a 1 hour time slot, because he said this has been 2.5 hours when he first gave the presentation community-wise. He's given the presentation at Cambrex, Zoetis, he's given it many different times, but we told him he had a 1 hour time slot and he really pared it down. He's got it better, so.
Way better to be proactive versus reactive.
Right. And that's one of his messages in there too, is you've got to have that ability to assess and react rather quickly.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
You bet, thank you.
And very good use of 21st century technology versus having a piece of paper with some typed information on it there as well.
Want me to email you anything?
Sure. Moving on to agenda item 7, 2015 summer facility projects. That would be Mr. Mitchell.
Terry's coming up with his pieces of paper.
You're fine. Give him your Chromebook so he can read it off of the screen.
How much time am I going to put on Jerry?
I've got the iPad back there, but maybe I don't have the time he has. I don't know what it is. Anyway, because Terry sent this to me, so she did my work for me.
Very
Anyway,
good.
I think you guys got this handout here. It's what the Buildings Grounds Committee and myself, I guess sort of myself and the Buildings Grounds Committee sort of reviewed it with me, sort of left it up to me what I thought probably what our goals were for this next summer to work on. And I think you have this handout, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, good. So we'll sort of go over it a little bit, and I'm going to tell you some things about maybe a few of those items. We don't know yet. The way it sounds, maybe the white building might not have to be moved yet, so possibly could be $50,000 there that we could put into another location or something else, or maybe if a few of these bids come a little bit higher, we can work that around. So as we talk about this, as you look at that, anything with an X on the far right is a concrete bid. We've got the bid set on those. The rest of them we're still working on either with Gary Anderson, which is an architect, or Terry McCarthy, or some different groups yet that we're working on. Fix a water issue at the entrance to the high school parking lot. If you drive up to the high school parking lot and you drive up from about spring when it thaws all the way till the first frost, if you notice there's always water running right there on the entrance and the exit, and now some of this blacktop's breaking out a little bit. I guess it's been that way for years. In the past, they drilled a hole down through there to sort of relieve the pressure. We need to get that fixed and get that patch back up. So that's on this issue, or this summer, hopefully, to do. We started the cement work at Washington School in the front. I don't know what direction that is because it sits sort of sideways there. I call it the south just to keep it square for myself. To the west towards North Grand, we need to continue on and fix that curbing and sidewalk along there. We need to finish up the safety locks that we started last year. We got all the hallway classrooms done that faced the hallways last year at Washington and Lincoln. Now we're going to do the inside hallways. Then that project will be completed. So that continues on with what Mr. Gable said, and get that so it's even more secure there. We had a bid for additional roof work at Lincoln School. We want to continue on. We need to start working on our walk-ins, coolers and freezers at every location. I chose this year Washington. That's the one we've had the most repairs, upkeep on. One thing about that is a lot of times when they're built original, they're built right into the cement, so it's going to increase our costs a little bit there. We're going to have to do some tear out cement work over the summer and re-pour some cement in there, so that'll add a little cost. So that looks a little high. That's the reason why it's up a little bit on price. Second floor at this school, we have some holes through there. Been there for a while, not sure what they're from. I have a guess what they're from, but on two larger windows. I had a local firm come to give me a bid. He won't go up that high and do it, so I'm pursuing a couple other places that will give me some bids on getting those replaced this year. There's a wall by the dumpster at Lincoln School. If you drive over on the north side of Lincoln School, it's starting to crumble. We need to do some tuck pointing there, fix that wall, straighten it up a little bit before it falls over on us. Then also at Lincoln, there's some steps that are sort of crumbling away on the corners. We fixed the ones around on the west side last year. Now we need to work on the ones over by the gym, fix up those a little bit, and in turn, I guess I'm skipping down a little bit, finish the second handrail on the other side that we did last summer, get the other side handrail done too. Replace windows in the cafeteria at Washington School. I had one of my staff, it was rusting away really bad on the bottom as you're sitting in the cafeteria looking towards the north, I call it, out towards the playground, the walking trail, all rusting away, a lot of air coming through there. We redid those. We need to, Gary's designing some things about some real nice cement work in the lower part and then windows up on the top part of that. So we're working on that right now too. This is a need, I guess, or a want instead of more of a need, but they have a couple tag office and AEA office on the second floor of the older building at Lincoln. Wide open, no door on it. They'd like a door in between there, so I've got it on the list. We got to continue on at Washington School, getting the carpet off of the walls on the east side of the building. We did the west side last year. Unbelievable long project. So we budgeted some money. Last year we did not budget money for that. This year I put money in for it because between staff that I hired to do it, paint because of the metal that was underneath the primer we had to put on, very costly. So help out my budget, we put it into this year. These are two big ones I'm working on. We've got back a bid for some engineering work. Terry and I met and talked about it a little bit. He sent me a voicemail real late today, not early enough so we could talk about it more tonight. We're trying to get that cost down a little bit, but we're looking at adding at least 18 additional spots at Washington School, because if you go there, we have parking all over the grass and everything else. And then an additional 17 spots at Lincoln School, keeping the bus pickup where it is. I've talked to all the bus drivers and some of the teachers there. The bus pickup area works great at Lincoln School. There's no cars that pull up there, so we need to extend the parking lot and then build a sidewalk that comes around for the staff to go into a card swipe door so they can get in. So once that gets finalized, we'll get the plans out to everyone so you can see it, but I'm very excited about both of them. The one at Washington School is going to fit in just excellent up towards the front of the school, farther up, have their own entrance and exit out so it doesn't combine into that one entrance and one exit and create even more of a bottleneck. So that's what I'm working on with Terry McCarthy to get that finished up. Small press box at the visitor side of the football field. We've had a lot of pushing from athletic department to maybe get that done, so we're looking at that. I don't know how much of a project that's going to be because it depends on which way we go with it, whether we go behind the visitors bleachers like what we did on the home side or build it onto the bleachers, so we'll see as that gets designed. I'd like to start replacing some of the wood bleachers on the home side, finish that up, and maybe get over to some of the visitor side to get that switched to aluminum. Last year we replaced a lot of the wood bleachers, boards that were starting to really get bad shape. I'd like to continue that and get that, do some a year or something like that and get that done. Then some equipment needs, propane burnisher for all the buildings that we can share, just speed of work and the quality of work that one of those can do. They let us use one last summer at Washington, and I think all my staff pretty much fell in love with it and trying to beat me over the head to get one, so we put one in. And then a car lift. We want to try to get maybe something larger for mechanic, one larger item a year. That's the first thing he'd like to do. He's laying on the ground changing oil on all the cars, so it'd be nice to have that. One thing the Buildings and Grounds Committee really tried to get me to do is try to come up with some more money so we could build phase one of the bus barn. We did it. We came up with an additional $93,000 out of our Pebble money, $93,500 to be exact, and there possibly could be more depending on how we do this. We possibly could have up to $100,000 more if needed. And the reason I'm saying that, if we don't have to move the white building, possible $50,000 there, if everything falls into budget numbers, what we have here, and if we don't have to demo the current bus barn. And the reason I'm saying that is if we build phase one at the college grounds over sort of where the white building is right now, we could build that, leave that up till we build phase two and still use that for buildings and grounds. So there's options there, but we want to do what's best, so we might say, well, we want that building out of there anyway, but Then if you look at second page, with that additional $93,500, that puts us up to $370,803 to build phase one of the bus barn. I was really hoping Gary had talked to him this morning. He thought he'd have some plans for me that Dr. Cox could put up on a PowerPoint. He didn't get it to me today, so I don't have that. But I'm very excited about what we're coming up with. We met a couple weeks ago and designed some things, and I put a design together first, and he's tweaking it a little bit. But it'll be an indoor wash bay, an in and an out. So if you look at it, it'll be about 60 foot deep by about 165 foot wide. An office space, a small break room, 2 bathrooms, some storage, a mechanical room, 2 work bays, 1 indoor wash bay, and then enough room for all of the cars to go inside on phase one. Phase two then would be the inside for all the buses. So that's what we're looking at that. Some things to talk about. Oh, that was the additional. Okay. Then the last thing I want to bring up is, I know we want to continually work at the ICAT that was developed a few years ago. So the things we are doing that we've either done last year, and specifically for Washington and Lincoln is what I'm talking about, because we're not working as much on the high school, middle school until we get this finalized on what we're doing. So on the list that we had, there was 8 items for Lincoln School and 6 items for Washington School that were on the ICAT. With what we did last summer and what we're doing this summer, 5 out of the 8 items on the ICAT for Lincoln School will be completed by the end of this summer, and 4 out of the 6 items will be completed at Washington School after this summer. So we are progressing on that very nicely. So I guess that's where we're at with it. And any questions for me or anything like that?
Wow, Jerry.
Yeah, very good.
Be a busy summer again. Last summer was very busy. This will be it. You bet, Jim.
The little light up here on the top of the roof, Whitley wasn't working tonight. You got 2 little lights that are up there on top.
Oh, okay. Out in front?
The right one isn't working.
The out front?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the ones way up there.
Would you
I
fill
think
out a
they're-
K-12 tracker on that?
Solar lights, I think.
Okay.
Nice work, Jerry, and, whoops, might be off. Nice work on this and buildings and grounds too there's a lot that you're getting done, and it's great to see that you're making so much progress on that ICAT.
Yeah, we're getting there. I was nervous, and I know there's been some talk that we need to keep working on the ICAT, so we really tried to concentrate on getting the things that we could done. The things that are really left on the ICATs are very big projects. For example, finishing up the air conditioning at Lincoln School. That's going to be taking just about all of our Pebble money for a year, so we need to decide what year we want to try to do that. And then some of the other things is berm landscaping at Washington. Now that we're keeping that mode, is it what we want, or do we want to do something different? So there's things like that we can discuss, but we're really trying to hit some things that really need to be done, plus getting some of the ICATs done at the same time.
And you're confident that by coming up with the total available money of $370,803, that we could build phase one of a transportation center?
After talking with Gary, that's numbers that I sort of come up with that I think we can do it for that. And then after talking to Gary Anderson, which is an architect that we work with quite a bit, after we got the size that we wanted and everything, and he put a square footage number to it, and we're right there for
Okay.
phase one with everything I talked about. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a phase one and then phase 1A. Phase one will be, so then we have an
We're all into
option. So just in
phases.
case, so everyone knows well about, just in case something happens that maybe bids come in higher, we really want the office, the break room, the bathrooms, the 2 work bays, and the wash bay for sure. So that's what we call phase one, and I'd love to have the cars inside because it's a pain, let me tell you right now, having those cars outside, moving snow around them. I take them down and fill them up with gas every morning, scrape them, try to get them down, get them. So I'd love to have the cars inside, so that's 1A. So if for some reason we're a little over budget by having the phase 1A, having the cars inside, we'll build the basic part of a bus barn now and then incorporate that next year or whenever we can do it. But I think Gary and I are both very confident we'll be able to get that entire thing done. So in our plan, we had a couple options where to put it. I think right now we're back putting it at the college grounds locations because of some things that we talked about with BLDD on where the Circle Drive's going to possibly go and stuff like that. So unless we decide anything here, once we get farther along in the discussion, we're sort of leaning back to going back on the college grounds, so.
One line item on here we talked about, Jerry, was and you just briefly mentioned, was the press box on the visitor side. And we talked about, that's really materials cost because they're going to try and do a cooperative project with the industrial technology kids to actually build it.
Absolutely.
Which I thought was maybe briefly say, that was a really a cool project that I hope goes through.
Yep, and it is. After I met with Gary Anderson about it, I went and met with Kevin Wedeking, which is our industrial tech teacher, and with his background, he super excited about it. They are 100% on board that they want to build it. We get the design done and all that, and all the specs put together, and so we have $15,000 there, but that's Gary's cost with labor and everything, so we're hoping that maybe comes in about half that cost. Originally, I had only about $6,000-7,000 on there because that's what I was thinking of doing the whole time, but he goes, let's do it with labor and everything, then that way we're on the high end and we should be able to do it easily. So yeah, we're definitely Kevin's all on board and he'd love to have his class do it, and I think with the industrial tech, with his background that he has on his own construction firm in the past, I think we can actually incorporate them to do maybe some more projects in the future for us.
So they want to do some cement work at Washington and Lincoln?
Yeah.
Did you have something, Jim?
Yeah, I guess the question I had, we got the 370,000. Is that after? I don't remember what was the figure we were talking, Terry probably knows. We were talking about we got to borrow from the bus barn project, maybe for the sportsman project. But
that's already taken out.
That's already taken out.
Yeah, the money that we have took out is out of.
He's essentially replaced it with other.
So they could turn around and borrow it, we still borrow that money?
Yeah, it's still, yep, good question.
Because originally, Jim, we were up around, after buying the heaters, before I started, we were around 380, something like that. And then with what money needed for the sports complex, put us down to the 277, 303. And now with these guys putting me to the task to try to get more money back in there, we got it back up to about what it was.
Okay.
And really, just to clarify, we're not, you're not putting off any major projects.
No.
There's no big, that we just are we're getting caught up and we're able to take some of that money to commit back to it.
Right. And of course, there are bigger projects that we want to do, but we look at those as we come up over the next few years, as building projects progress and everything like that, then we decide, hey, maybe we want to spend $300,000 and replace a whole section of a roof or something like that. So those are things that we'll do, but we're still continually getting caught up on some smaller items to.
Well, I actually think that this bus barn project is a priority item that needs to be done. I mean, it's going to save us money on bus repairs and everything else.
And it's long overdue.
It's long overdue.
Yeah, and we're getting
It sort of put me to a task that we want to try to get this done. Our goal is to build it this next summer.
We said we wanted to do it, start construction in June and pay the first bill in July out of the new fiscal budget, so.
Okay, sounds good.
So that's our goal. So I'm very confident, hopefully we'll meet that.
This is an action item to approve the recommendations from Buildings and Grounds Committee for the summer facility projects out of the physical plant and equipment levy funds. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the 2015 summer facility projects. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll have a roll call vote, please.
Maycumber?
Yes.
Winnering?
Yes.
Dyke?
Yes.
Walker?
Yes.
Frisbee?
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thanks.
Agenda item 8, cost-saving measures. And I believe that's you, Doctor.
That's me. Our enrollment decreased by 47 students, which requires that we trim money from our budget for the coming school year. Right now, we're anticipating that will be in the neighborhood of $330,000. We could lessen that amount that we need to cut if we were involved in operational sharing. The state offers incentive money to do that. The district could generate some additional dollars by sharing superintendent or other central office positions with another school district. So that's one thing for the board to consider. I plan to begin talking with staff in January about potential ways to save money. And the question I have is, would you prefer to see the list of proposed cost-cutting measures first? Or can I just start talking with them and see what ideas they generate and bring that information back on January 12th for you to consider on that evening?
You got time that we could share you with another school? No?
Well,
I'll second that.
I would prefer you go and start speaking with it. It'd be very interesting to see and let them, they're going to know best. Go to them, come up with a list, and then come back to us with a list of cost-saving measures.
Yeah, my opinion is that, of course, agenda item 9 falls right into this, and I'm quite hopeful that, of course, the number that we have to work with is shrunken by that if we are to move forward with it. You know, at that point, you know, hopefully the gap that we need to bridge here is more doable with maybe items that come up. You know, to address, you know, your sharing thing, I mean, the comment that I would have on that is that if sharing a position, whether it be you or somebody else, for a day a week is versus the decision of cutting a program or cutting something else substantially, I think that should be weighed. But like I said, I agree with them that we've got substantial amounts of time committed already in the next 2 years of certainly your position and Terry's position, that time commitment may be difficult to overcome. But
We don't have just a plate full of items going on in our district. We have a buffet of items going on in our district.
Well said.
So we need some attention, and we need some designated full attention.
Full attention.
you had
our staff.
kind of, you know, roughed a number in the past of, you know, give an example of your position shared. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
sure. According to my calculations, it would be about $51,000 from the state just in incentive money, and then it depends on how much time you shared my position with another district. If it's 1 day a week, it could be another $37,000. If it's 2 days a week, $74,000. And it's something for you to balance with everything we have going on.
Yeah. So that's,
I would be
that's-
remiss if I didn't at least
Yeah.
suggest that.
And I agree. It's, again, pitting 1 day a week versus whatever the other options are that we don't know at this point is, I hate to write it off, but it's pretty far removed.
At the bottom of your list?
It's pretty far at the
Yeah.
bottom of the list. yeah.
I would agree. Way at the
But it's
bottom.
not off my list, is what I would say as well. Along with that, like I said, I'm hopeful that, you know, we can move forward with agenda item 9 and that helps, you know, creative.
Didn't we try that once before, Scott?
Which one?
Was you on the board when they
Shared Andy?
No, no, I wasn't.
I
course, they
was,
didn't have any.
I was on the board, and of course Terry can tell you too, because Terry was shared for a while too. But, you know, I really think we, like you say, Robin, we've got so much going on here that I think that we need to get our things right first.
Certainly.
You're gonna be the last resort.
And there has to be some other options on
That's how
ways
I
to
put
cut
it.
it.
Well, and it wasn't until recently that you included in one of your Friday Focus or Finally Friday?
Finally
Friday Focus memos to us. You listed all of the things that we're currently doing. And that's about the first time in 14 months I've been here since all those things were listed on one page or in one paragraph.
Yeah.
And when you see it, it's rather daunting.
Yeah.
And so my first response was, based upon that list, I don't know if I have time to share this man with anyone else because we have a lot going on.
When it comes down, there might be cost savings up front, but the cost savings might quickly be lost in missed opportunities and misappropriated time and things that are not tended to correctly. We've got a real delicate balance of things that are going on, and full attention is definitely needed.
So my understanding, we'd like the superintendent to proceed with his discussions with faculty and administration before he brings us the smorgasbord
I think that's
of options.
appropriate.
They might come up with some ideas that you haven't thought of.
I am sure they'll come up with excellent ideas. Yeah.
or that they're willing to look at or pursue or accept later. So, and you're planning on bringing those back to us when?
January 12th, I can give you an update. I plan to start talking the first week of January.
Okay.
And at what kind of timeline are we on to enacting these, the suggested?
When we get to number 9, that timeline will kick in so that, we should know by the beginning of February how many people have opted to take early retirement. And that'll give us a better idea of how much.
Okay, that's kind of my question.
Our budget needs to be decided by
April 15th.
And if we were to send out termination notices, they need to be sent out by
30th
of
April.
April. So that gives us a guideline for our timeline, I guess. Okay, this was only a discussion item, so Dr. Cox will proceed with his work. Agenda item 9, early retirement policies. This is an action item, so Dr. Cox.
Last spring, we had considerable discussion about early retirement and offering it on a very infrequent basis. We had a larger than average amount offered last year, and 10 employees accepted that offer due to a desire to minimize the impact on students and programming for 2015-16. I'm recommending that the board approve the first reading of policy 405.10 and 305.7, early retirement policies for teachers and administrators for 2014-15, and then waiving that second reading to provide adequate notice to eligible employees to consider retirement. In the policy, it states that any teacher or administrator who took the early retirement offer would receive a payment of $15,000.
One-time payment?
One-time payment.
And last spring, we offered a one-time payment of $25,000.
25.
That's virtually the only difference.
That's, yeah. That honors the decision that we made last year when we said, look, we're not doing this
I agree.
for several years. It makes financial sense to offer it again this year.
Do we want to offer another, like we did last year, the first 10, first 5, first 8?
I think we take as many as we can, no limitation.
I think we set a limit, my personal opinion on setting the limit last year was because the dollar amount was so high.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't see a reason this year to set a limit like what we did. I think we just give people the opportunity to consider that if they're ready to retire, there's the incentive.
My only comment is the implementation of this. I would like to see, it looked, of course, when it comes to what positions are vacated, how those are filled, and how, of course, that is creatively worked with. If the positions need to be refilled, if not, those.
Or if they're not filled.
If they're not filled, yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely
and that's
absorbed.
That's the reason that I'm
Yeah.
advocating for this.
Okay.
There could be some positions that
Yeah,
we
it
wouldn't
could
have
be
to fill.
Big savings versus.
So their deadline, if this were approved tonight and the second reading is waived, is when to submit their paperwork or their notice?
I forget.
I didn't look at that ahead of the meeting.
January,
Submit an applications program, by January 30th, on or before
by
January 30th.
January 30th. I forgot to highlight that.
Yeah.
To find it easily.
Right here.
Yep.
In bold.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the early retirement based on the 405.10 and the 305.7, the teachers and administrators for early retirement, $15,000 one-time payment for the 2013 school year.
And waive the second.
And waive the second reading.
2000,
Waive
excuse
the second
me.
reading.
14.
2014, 15.
14,
Oh,
15.
14, 15, okay. I'm sorry.
And to waive the second reading, correct?
Yep, and to waive the second reading.
And I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to approve agenda item 9 as presented, as well as waiving the second reading. Any further discussion or comments? Hearing none, we'll have a roll call vote, please.
Winterick,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Frisbee,
Yes.
Maycumber.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. Consideration of consent agenda. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve consent agenda?
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Roll call vote, please.
Dyke,
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Frisbee.
Yes.
Maycumber.
Yes.
Winterick.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. Important upcoming dates. You want to do that?
Sure.
Before you start that, I'd like to make a comment that I did receive my award for better boardmanship coming to
Oh, very good.
last Thursday.
Hey, we saw your name. Well,
Congratulations.
Bring it in, show me, and I get it framed.
We're hoping to get 5 of those next fall. We are in session until next Tuesday. Winter break is December 24th to January 2nd. Come back on the 5th. Next regular board meeting is the 12th. There is a District 3 meeting on January 28th, I wanted to point out, at Sumner Fredericksburg High School at 5:30 PM. That's on a Wednesday. That was the closest one to us.
And what do they do with those district meetings? Any idea?
You should be getting a flyer. I got one today.
Okay.
So,
Haven't been home yet.
5.
We're all about the points now.
I'm gonna have to take off from work and go then.
When do we need to sign up for that? Sign up individually or?
You can contact Lisa or sign up individually, yeah.
Thank you.
And I would think all the way up until that week that it takes place.
Any other business to come before the board? Hearing none, we will adjourn.